Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's live. Obviously, today we're doing something really special and different, but just to kick this off, a little bit of housekeeping as per usual. Please keep the chat here farmer friendly as always. And then also, we can only accept questions through the YouTube live chat. So throw them all in there if you have them. We will be paying attention to them and pulling them up as we see fit. And then, of course, before we dive into today's panel discussion, which is going to be really exciting and special. I'm going to run through just a couple updates for Pixels because we have so much going on right now. So let's just whip through a couple updates. So the airdrop, expect to see the berry airdrop very, very, very soon, like in the next couple of days or even today. Keep an eye out for that one. The decoration contest for your farmlands, winners will be chosen in the next day or two, so keep a lookout for that. And then if you've logged into the game recently, you will have seen that it has transformed into a beautiful snowing holiday world. Really, really fun to create that. And you heard it here first, a quest is in the works, so stay tuned for that. And then last but certainly not least, I can't share too much information on this quite yet, but we have an incredible partnership announcement coming up. So pay attention for that one because it's going to be huge. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guests. Hello. Okay, let's just dive right in. So all of these incredible women are building in Web3 with us. And we just wanted to bring them up here today to be able to talk about like all the incredible things that they're doing and with this, innovative technology and whatnot. So we have Alex Poscente from BITS Crypto.
Hello, hello.
Katy Atherholt from Seam, and then Beck Jones of Clutch Wallet. So I thought it would be great if each of you could introduce yourself and maybe give a quick intro on what you're doing in this space. So Alex, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think Parker's in the waiting room, Heidi. Just to
let you know. Yes. Okay, wonderful.
Amazing.
Okay. We also have Parker Pachirat of Boys Club. So welcome. Okay, Alex, kick us off.
Incredible. Okay, what's up, y'all? My name is Alex Poscente. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I have been a serial founder my entire life. I really get excited about the intersection of art, impact, and technology. Over the past couple of years, I built this remote consultancy for students who were doing business consulting and software developing, scaled that internationally as a solo founder, totally bootstrapped. That's being acquired right now. And about a year ago, I started working with two of my friends on a concept called BITS. The main idea behind BITS Crypto is basically like, how do we onboard the next million crypto investors in a way where it's fully decentralized, there's total ownership, and there's no middleman necessary. So yeah, really excited to explain everything about it. But in essence, what we're doing is enabling full background trading on chain for the first time. And that is the TLDR.
Amazing. Beck, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. My name is Beck Jones. I am an Australian who moved over from Sydney to LA in 2019. I left the banking industry to start working in crypto. The first company I worked with was a social media app that paid its users in crypto. It was a little bit early on in the piece back then, but I spent some time as a CMO across that company and another DeFi trading application. I started working on Clutch in 2021, so kind of December last year. And the initial kind of thinking for Clutch was building a wallet experience that was, something that was inclusive and marketed towards a broader demographic of people to start welcoming more people into the world of Web3. And we've evolved it into more of a D app. We have functionality where you can purchase crypto. You can kind of visualize and see your NFTs. We're starting to integrate a kind of 3-click process into participating in different DeFi pools and starting to do some work with Lens and the kind of social Web3 experience over there. So we're still a pretty early stage company, but enjoying kind of building in the space and really trying to onboard a different group of people that we haven't seen coming into the world of crypto and Web3.
Wonderful. Parker, would you like to go next?
Sounds great. Thanks so much for hosting this and for having us today. It's great to be here and to see some familiar and awesome faces here with us today. I am Parker J. Pachirat. I'm on the founding team of Boys Club. Boys Club is a social club, community, and DAO working to drive a new kind of culture in Web3 and support builders in this space. We have a design focus towards women and non-binary individuals, but we're open to all. And our view of kind of inclusivity in crypto is not necessarily a sorority or women's group, but rather creating an inclusive and empowering culture to celebrate this awesome space. So the Boys Club universe is pretty expansive. We do events, both educational and social. We produce content. We have a podcast. We have a newsletter. And then we also have a lot of exciting projects in the works. So we have a beta studio with our first beta product actually being released this Friday. We have a consulting arm, a grants program. Outside of Boys Club, I also do early stage investing in crypto as well with FinTech Collective.
Awesome. Katy.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having us, Heidi. I am Katy Atherholt on Twitter and Discord and other places, based in Brooklyn. I have a background in design, and I got into Web3 through DAOs like Friends with Benefits and Cabin, which, for those who don't know, is kind of like Pixels, but in the real world. I formerly worked on health tech, specifically women's healthcare and early stage startups, and I'm now a co-founder at Seam. Seam is aiming to bring the MySpace, Tumblr vibe into Web3 social, so you can code, curate, and design your perfect social spaces.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm so happy to have all of you with us today. And just to kick this off, I thought we could talk about a really on topic. So here at Pixels, we talk a lot and we do a lot to try to involve users from a diverse background. It goes without saying that the majority of people in Web3 are male identifying. And so we're trying to do what we can to involve, in the future, especially involve more people from Web2 from all backgrounds. And that does include women, of course. So our approach is through gaming, and we really believe in the power of gaming. And although we generally stay away from the term gamification, I think it's a really powerful word and concept to use here. So I was kind of curious through all of your various projects, how much you all are integrating gaming themes or gamification into your projects.
Yeah, happy to kick things off with that question. I don't think gamification is a dirty word whatsoever. I think it's awesome. I think it's a great tool mechanism to create positive sum games and flywheel effects. Obviously, this looks different across different projects and different companies. For Boys Club, I'd say there's several ways where gamification kind of comes into play. I think in creating a game, the first sort of necessary condition, right, is world building. That's something that's a really big part of Boys Club is what world are we building? What culture are we building? What brand are we building? And then within that, what opportunities exist to get involved? And what are sort of the requirements of those, right? So we have a merit-based application to join our community. You don't have to have an NFT. You don't have to have a token. It's non-financial. But we look for intrinsically motivated participants. And on average, we receive about 300 plus applications per week. Once you're in the community, there's also several other layers and tiers of ways you can get involved. So we have Boys Club DAO. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. And within our DAO, our DAO, it consists of all of our contributors, so the people working on Boys Club day to day. And within that, that's also sort of tiered out as well. We have about 7 or 8 different guilds. Guilds are sort of just the different teams working in Boys Club, and each guild has contributors and leads. So each of these sort of steps to getting involved really just requires someone with a great idea and eagerness and willingness to participate, and also someone with high levels of ownership. So, the more ownership that you show and more initiative you show within Boys Club, the more kind of decision-making power and opportunity to create or build whatever you want to see within it arises.
Awesome. That sounds really cool.
I love that so much because I think what's so cool about Boys Club, and I would say I've just been sort of like a lurker more than a contributor in my experience so far. But like today, Parker and I were at the same Boys Club coffee. We walk into this coffee shop and they have an NFT display with like the Boys Club Zaddy NFT. And it was just such a cool moment to have like that connection, like the world that has been largely digital, particularly for me, because I haven't unfortunately made it to a lot of the Boys Club events, was like connected to the real world. And I think like one of the coolest parts of getting involved in the space is that so much of that is normalized, and there's so many opportunities to add like fun, like, who are you in this world building, like in this world type of quiz, right? Like what kind of farmer are you for Pixels? What kind of like Zaddy are you for Boys Club? Whatever the equivalent, like each of us has those opportunities, and it feels like a really good fit for this space. So I think a lot about that too with world building. It's just like making that connection from like URL to IRL, or however you want to put it.
Yeah, that's especially because like there are no rules yet, there are no like standards, especially in Web3. So it's kind of like you can literally, especially with gamification, we've seen like I'm working on a fintech platform, and I can speak to like what we do with Bits, but it's really like you can read old marketing textbooks, you can read like different playbooks by like huge companies, but really you have like a full green field in terms of how you want to scale and grow things. And as long as like stickiness is at the forefront and community is also at the back end, it's like if those two things exist, it'll probably do well in Web3. In terms of what we've done at Bits, so the first version of the application we launched is structured like an Acorns for crypto. And for those who don't know, it's Acorns is basically it takes any purchase you make in real life, rounds up to the next dollar, and then takes that spare change and reinvest it into cryptocurrencies. So you basically set your portfolio, you let it run. And a way that we've gamified the entire like onboarding process of setting up those roundup or recurring investments is like having certain incentives, right? When you complete your first roundup, you get $5 in free Bitcoin. So that's a pretty standard like referral program. But as we're moving into the full decentralized backend that has smart trading. So for instance, like Elon Musk tweets about Bitcoin in a positive light, we can auto invest $100 on behalf of the user. Or if you want to set like social sentiment, you want to track certain market volatilities, buy orders, sell limits, basically all of these different ways that you can interact with the market, we've gamified incentives to learn. So like my main goal is really like in creating this diverse space, making sure people understand how to engage with crypto in a way that like feels empowering and safe, especially like the whole FTX thing. Security is really big. But yeah, I'd say like gamifying it, at least in our lens, is more through the educational port. It's like, how do we gamify like educating the user, rather than them like actually purchasing something. Like the main goal for us is teaching them.
Yeah, and gamifying it in that sense too, or like through education, is huge. I was reading about, statistics and all of that. It's something like 5% of female or of entrepreneurs in Web3 are female, and I was reading through all of that kind of stuff. And one thing that they pointed to was education. And I started reflecting on that in my day-to-day life too, of like, okay, yeah, that's true. A lot of the time I'm like, oh, I work in crypto, I'm involved in the crypto space, and generally men know the terms a little bit better than women. And it really also depends on their background, like what they're interested in, how much information they understand. And then we'll touch on this in a minute, but yeah, there are certain things that happen in the crypto industry that kind of puts a negative connotation on it. So I think education is a huge component to all of this.
I mean, I feel like we can also just throw out there, or I feel like I can, that language is used to gatekeep spaces. And so when you go into a conversation, you don't understand anything and no one can explain it simply, and you're made to feel dumb, like that's the worst case scenario for people that are trying to get into Web3 and like don't understand, like Boys Club, Bits, Clutch. I think you guys all have this common like welcome into the room energy, if that makes sense. And I think that's a huge part of just like, that's like table stakes. It should be table stakes.
Totally, yeah. And just to add on to that, I think like one really powerful leverage point that crypto and Web3 have that we should utilize is the many different touch points of spaces that this technology and these initiatives touch, right? So social mobilization with DAOs, social organization, art, NFTs, finance, DeFi. There's so many different avenues to get involved that reach so many different kinds of interests. So I think, moving away from just characterizing crypto or Web3 through one vertical in the space is really important, and illuminating all those different touch points that speak to many different interests and passions is really important.
Yeah, I can just piggyback off of that, Parker. It's something that's kind of core to how we're building Clutch at the moment, which is I felt like at least when I started hearing about crypto and getting involved, it was through this lens of like investment and getting a return and making money. And then the beauty of sticking around in this space has been the evolution of DeFi, of the introduction of NFTs, of kind of metaverses that are starting to be built, and this kind of like beautiful cultural element that's actually come into the space. And I think just like the awareness around what blockchain technology is doing in terms of empowering ownership and kind of Web3 versus just this like one vertical of kind of crypto. And so as we've been building Clutch, that's been like this constant theme of, if we're building the kind of Web3 homepage, like it's making sure we're touching on all those different elements. And there's this beauty of people coming in through one vertical, but then learning like, oh, I can now earn interest on like my crypto assets I'm holding through kind of different DeFi applications. And there's these kind of communities through NFTs over here, but then there's this kind of like social Web3 space that's building as well. And so I think it's so kind of wonderful to see people go through that education experience of like starting with one vertical but building onto another. And yeah, that's something that's really front of mind for us, at least at Clutch, and trying to build a product that kind of supports that really inclusive experience around all the different avenues you can explore.
Yeah, and that's huge. And that's why I'm so happy to have all of you here, because we're all coming at this technology from very different, perspectives and methods and ways and all of that. So it's so interesting to see it come together, but also be so different. Anyways, you already went through all of that. I'm not going to try to recap, but something that I thought was also just kind of an interesting thing to touch on was this whole thing that happened with Alameda Research. Obviously there was a female CEO, and if you're not familiar with the whole FTX Alameda Research kerfuffle, look into it. We don't need to dive into that today, but it goes back to, in the mainstream media, suddenly people are putting this Sam Bankman on a pedestal or taking him off his pedestal. And that is the headline. And I'm going and talking to people day-to-day life, and they're like, oh, you're in Web3. Sam Bankman. And I'm like, no. I'm in Web3. I'm passionate about blockchain technology and what we can do and ownership and all of that. So do any of you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think there's, well, a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, Caroline Ellison, absolute G. If you haven't checked out her Tumblr, you definitely should. Big fan. I think, though, to touch on the point you just raised, right, of this sort of misconception between FTX and the rest of the crypto space, clarifying that distinction is really important. And I don't think it's necessarily the public's fault that that those two things are being conflated, right? The media is very much representing FTX as a portrayal of the space as a whole. And so I think it's, we have an urgent call to action here to really, take control of the narrative and clarify some of those misunderstandings, particularly around the aspect of decentralization versus centralization. Pantera Capital put out a great newsletter actually after all these events took place, really saying what this really means actually is a call for more stringent regulation of centralized entities and more freedom for decentralized entities. And I thought they captured that very well. But I think, just in terms of sort of bringing it back to like the ground, I think when you're talking to someone and maybe they don't know much about crypto and they bring up FTX, you can just clarify, right? Like it's centralized. We all know this. It's important to do your own research. This is very much a risk that, is easy to make yourself aware of, and educate them on some great non-custodial wallets and exchanges, right? Uniswap is amazing. Rainbow Wallet is amazing. And all of those applications and decentralized applications are ones that deserve our attention. And so I think it's, also really important with that to give people an actionable follow-up, right? Clarify any misconceptions and tell them why it's important, and then give them, something that they can actually do or try or learn more about from there.
Very well said. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like the era of decentralization, that's pretty much like the entire fulcrum in which like Bits kind of like sits on top of. Our entire bet for the past like year-ish, we were basically hedging against the centralized exchange model. So FTX, when it happened, like there are two responses. One, like obviously consumer adoption for crypto is going to be a lot slower. It's going to take longer for people to feel not burned, like feel welcome back into the space. But I like firmly and deeply believe that too, this is the end of CeFi and not DeFi, right? Like centralized finance versus decentralized finance. If anything, like the market's opening up, people want to put their digital assets somewhere. I think it will inevitably be the rise of decentralized exchanges. And Vitalik also posted this really interesting piece on non-custodial CEXs, right? CEXs, centralized exchanges, for those who don't know. And it was really just all about root ownership, bringing it back peer-to-peer, understanding that like blockchain technologies were supposed to be interacted with to make technology, one, better, but two, transactions faster, easier, and more transparent. So yeah, I think the main takeaway there is just like bringing it back to like why crypto was even invented in the first place. I think this is like growing pains at large, and a lot of people got really, really burned in the process. But I think overall it'll be productive for like the direction of crypto.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a push as well into like the reasons that people maybe haven't adopted DeFi yet. And we're seeing this recurring conversation around like user experience and the different integrations. And so that's putting like a spotlight on those different, companies and user experiences in the DeFi space that haven't really nailed that user experience component yet. That makes it really like, easily, readily adopted. So I hope that, the fallout of Alameda Research and FTX is going to give us a bit of a lift in the user experience of DeFi. So it is something that's easier for everyone to adopt.
Yeah, user experience in this space is the bar is very low, and that's unfortunate. And I see we talk about it internally constantly as a game, and we get tons of feedback as well. Like, oh, I didn't realize this. I had to walk here to do this because I didn't have a hint or I didn't know whatever. And so we're like very much on the front of those problems. And Katy, I know you said you come from a design background and you're building what sounds like a social platform. So user experience is literally at the core of what you're building. Do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
I feel like I have so many thoughts and I don't want to like just go on a mad rant, but there's some really interesting trends happening where I think we've also gotten really used to a certain set of expectations within like UX. And I don't want to do the whole like millennial versus Gen Z thing, but truly there's like a certain age at which you grew up really, really digitally native and not just like mostly digitally native. And there's this whole nostalgia wave thing that's happening. And I think we're going to see an interesting kind of collision between people who have been in crypto for a long time being like, when is the UX finally going to feel like all my other apps that are like in the App Store and, you know, give me this sense of, you know, safety and peace, versus this younger generation that's just like, I kind of want it to be like weird and cool and mine. And I think what's interesting about crypto and the Web3 space is it can kind of accommodate both. And like, that's a lot of what we think about at Seam. It's just like, I mean, on the making things feel like safer, better UX side of things, if it's not safe, like, should it feel safe is a question we think about a lot. Like, if it's something where you should have a certain level of education to be, you know, using this exchange or to be messing around with, you know, more advanced trading, for example, as like a DeFi thing, like, should it feel safe? For social spaces, I think I can say with a lot of certainty, like, I want it to feel like mine. I want it to feel like my communities. I think that's one of the most interesting things about Discord when I go from server to server is I'm like, how do you group your like temporary channels versus your permanent channels? Like, how are you managing the flow of people, you know, in from your website or from Twitter, you know, into onboarding? Like, are people there welcoming people? They're not just like where a button is positioned or, you know, how long it takes you to do something, but it's also just like the intangible, like the soft skills of a community create that user experience too. And I think the scariest thing for me with the SPF thing is just like, as people get better at creating experiences that feel safe, that also becomes easier to mimic. And so it really is partnering, like pairing the like education aspect with like better user experience and not just being like, oh, if it's smoother and faster and easier to like buy NFTs, then it's better because, you know, yes, maybe, but also not always.
Yeah, I think it's also about like I think first of all, great points, and really insightful and generative. And I think it's like also about transparency too, right? So, like personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of any of my organizations. I'm not a huge fan of any regulation. That said, I do think transparency solves for a lot of this. Companies and protocols and communities should be transparent with their users about the risks, and give them, right, empower them with the resources they need to fully understand that, rather than just, for example, blocking a user because they don't meet X or Y criteria to understand it, whatever that means. I think there's a lot of, problematic kind of regulatory barriers that exist, even in TradFi today, with like angel investing, for example, of, you have to make a certain level of income before you're allowed to even participate in an income generating opportunity for yourself, which I think is pretty ridiculous, because just because you have a certain amount of money doesn't make you a good investor. But I do think, yes, like making users aware of the potential implications and risks in a transparent way and empowering them with the resources they need to fully understand that is absolutely crucial.
It's funny you actually mentioned that because I came across this really cool organization yesterday about investing in real estate, and I was so amped on it. It looked safe. The onboarding was friendly. Everything checked the boxes, and then it was like, okay, you have to invest at least 10,000 US dollars and you have to be American. And I was like, okay, well, for something I'm not sure if I 100% trust, 10K is a lot of money. I'm also not American, so therefore, obviously, can't do that. But yeah, it's really interesting. And then going back to, I think Katy, you were talking about this a little bit more as well, the community aspect. So I know all of you women a little bit, and so you probably already know that I'm the CMO, head of community here at Pixels. So this is like my passion, and forming a community is, it's funny because I get asked all the time on interviews and whatnot, like, how do you do it? What do you do? All of these different things. And so I've had to kind of come up with answers on the spot because it's just something that I've almost intrinsically done, but also relied on my team of trusted people as well to continue to either come up with ideas on how we can be better or promote, my ideas. And it's been very successful. It's been really lovely to work with all these people. And I think that is a huge core component of being successful is bringing on these new people and then retention. Retention is a topic we talk about constantly as a gaming platform. Like okay, great, we've got them on board. They've done the first quest. They've farmed their first potberry. Now what? How do we keep them here? How do we keep them happy? How do we keep them excited? So I'd actually love to hear about, all of you guys are building such different things from us. So like, how are you working on community and retention?
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, Luke tweeted that one of the best parts about building the Pixels community was the fact that you can just ask. You can be like, hey, do you like this? Do you want
Straight
this? Should we do this? And I think that is like when you reach a certain amount of momentum with the community, that's something that you absolutely can't afford to like squander that opportunity to just be like, yo, hi friends, like how should we do this? Or what do you think about this? Or just like, here's what we're like, transparency to Parker's point, like here's what we're doing. So just like shout out to Pixels and Luke and Heidi, you especially, for like both reaching out to get that feedback and then using it, because it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing we do. We have calls all the time with our community teams, and we have like 8 to, I don't know, maybe 10 different forms of various types of feedback that we constantly monitor. So yeah, it's a huge core component. So that's why I'd love to hear what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I've got lots of thoughts on this. It was such like an evolution for me to come from banking, where the word community wasn't used in Web 2. You have like audiences, you have customers, but you don't have this like very high touch experience with large groups of community. They might be following socials, or that would kind of be the extent of it. So when I kind of came out of that experience and into building an app where there was a group of investors, 10,000 plus people in a Telegram group that we were managing, and then a group of people that were using our product, that were kind of incentivized by their token ownership, but also trying to move them into like a customer base as well. It was a whole new experience, and the level of time and attention that it required was something that I kind of wasn't really prepared for or used to. So I think like that is just like one conversation to have around like the management and the high touch nature of community. Then you add on the layer of a 24/7 market across a global space, and like it's really intense. I remember Parker, I was jumping into Boys Club not that long ago because we were running a promotion with Clutch, and I was like looking at all the different cities you guys are active in, and like just the management of having people in all of those different locations, running different events, having people that speak the language, that are in touch with the culture. If you're hosting an event, like it's a whole suite of time and energy that that is necessary. But I think the return that you get is this emotional buy-in that we really haven't had before around different brands. Like to think that you have friendships that you're building around a brand that you're aligning yourself to, I think is really powerful, and where we're going to see, as this world kind of evolves in terms of just like the Web3 experience and the different businesses and brands that are building in there, the alignment people are going to have to those brands, I think is something that, it's second to none in comparison to Web 2 world. And so I'm excited to see kind of as that evolves, what the businesses and brands are going to be able to kind of pull from that. But it does require a completely different level of attention and time and detail to it.
100%. And I really appreciate those kind words. I think, I guess, sort of circling back to the sort of original question about retention, I think actually there are a few underrated but severely important steps in order to really get to that retention or set that up for success. The first of which is attracting intrinsically motivated participants into your community and into your network, right? So network participants that are truly sticky and there to add value, to contribute, and not to extract. I think this is particularly important and relevant in crypto and in DeFi. And I think what that starts with, right, is having a very clear communication of what you are and who you're for, and also who you're not for. I think a lot of communities and brands try to maybe start with an approach of marketing to a super large audience. But when you actually look at patterns across both time and the internet, what you'll tend to find is that the more niche a community is and the more niche its focus is, the stronger that community, right? So often actually subcultures have stronger and more sustainable cultures than the original kind of culture they stemmed from. So at Boys Club, we try to be really intentional, right, about our messaging, our branding. We're playful, we're cheeky, we're a little bit, I guess, edgy maybe, but we definitely have a certain, voice and sense of humor. And one thing that's been really amazing to see is we really are attracting intrinsically motivated participants. So many of the people who apply to our community and join our community come with an idea of what they want to see within Boys Club or what they want to build within Boys Club. So for example, our grants program I mentioned earlier, our product studio, our consulting arm, all of these things were completely community driven. It wasn't the core team sitting around, right, trying to iterate on our next idea, on our next product, on our next service. It was community members coming to us with these ideas and us, empowering them with the resources and contacts and time to bring that to fruition. And so I think that's really important, especially when you're building in public. One thing that we really value and emphasize at Boys Club is both building in public and also experimentation. So, there'll be many calls that we'll hop on where someone will have an idea and be like, well, this is my idea and here's the plan and here's the doc and here's the deck and everything I worked on, but I don't really have experience in this, so I don't know if I'm the right person to do it. And what we tend to say to that is like, just try, right? Worst thing that happens, doesn't work. And then we learn something from that and can continue building from there. But I think, once again, like the first and most important step in retention or sustainability of any community is attracting intrinsically motivated participants.
Yeah, I feel like that's so, so true, especially with Boys Club. I feel like it's like there's such a strong culture to the community. It's like if you recognize it, and a lot of times, like, it's just like, like as women in Web3, I feel like it's so approachable. Like I have so many friends that like feel like Boys Club, where it's like, if like I meet someone and I'm like, oh, you'd be a perfect fit, like that's incredible. It means like you did the branding job really well. Same with Pixels, like y'all have absolutely crushed it in terms of community building. So just like props to you. I think the main, especially in Web3, like, I don't know, the main thing to consider is the North Star of mission. I think like having a mission based on like around the company, the best KPI you have for that mission is a community. So it's like a KPI, key performance indicator. The more people who like are rallying around this like thesis that you have or this mission statement of we want to build this in the future of blank. Because again, like Web3, total greenfield in terms of how blockchain technologies are actually going to be used and applied, and like what's going to be the main use case in 10 years, 20 years, whatever. A lot of those KPIs driving themselves from like the actual community members, I think is really, really interesting. At BITS, for instance, the first time that we like, or at least like for the MVP that we created, the first time we promoted the idea of, hey, the market's really volatile. We want to make something to dollar cost average into cryptocurrencies. So here's like, we're thinking about making an Acorns for crypto. We had insane uptick in terms of like people signing up for waitlists, like thousands of people wanting to opt in for this like passive micro investing vehicle that gave people exposure, right? Where they could mitigate risk at the lows and also ride the highs. So our first like MVP was, okay, what kind of like community can we build around this premise? And as we're moving into like the decentralized backend where our entire engine is powered by DeFi, it's the exact same approach. It's like, what do people like actually really, really want? Do they want to like have more of a long-term investment hold? Do they want to just understand more about the space? Do they not want to know it's crypto at all? And they just want like blockchain technologies to make certain transactions easier. Like there are so many, at least on like the fintech side, There's so many applications of like use cases in crypto, and I feel like communities are really good validation metric for like whatever you do, and what people care about.
Yeah, actually, can I jump in on that really quick? Okay, I'm super curious and honestly always a little jealous when you talk about bits, because I feel like you have such a clear, like, it's this for this. And I think that's actually something that's not always, like, not everybody in crypto and Web3 gets the opportunity to have something that's like that clear messaging. But it's like that clear first action and that clear, like, we give you this thing, you already kind of know what that experience is like based on like another product that you've used. So when you start to think about that culture aspect of it, because it's something that everybody should be using bits, right? Like theoretically, every single person who's interested in crypto should be like doing some sort of DCA, in my opinion. And so how do you start to expand beyond this like clear call to action, which is like such an amazing thing to have, into this space of like aspirational culture, or you know, this is who you are if you are involved with bits? Like, I don't know if I'm articulating this correctly, but I'm curious how you think about it and how you start to like push past that initial like super clear, amazing, like easy call to action into like the culture building, world building that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's such a good question. So this is the biggest hurdle that we're currently like facing, I'd say, is like,
and I'm also asking because you're like, you are the person that steps up to like the hardest challenges. You're like that person that's just like, oh, you say I can't do it, watch me. And I love that. So I'm also like throwing you a hardball here.
Honestly, I think like the part of my amygdala is literally broken. Like fight or flight doesn't exist. I'm just like, let's go. It's here. We gotta do it. No, okay. So this is the thing. It's like, I truly do believe in the future of DeFi, like being decentralized entity to basically engage with like blockchain technologies. I think like the future of that will be decentralized. The hurdle here is the main like target customer I want are like, it's people not in crypto or Web3 yet. It's people that are totally new or crypto curious. They have like light exposure, but they want to get more invested in the space. But in terms of like the word DeFi, you're probably only like exposed to it if you are like a degen or if you've been in crypto for years. Like if you know what DeFi means, it means that you have like pretty extensive exposure. So the main hurdle we have is like, how do we educate those new types of users and consumers to, one, feel safe, and two, like know the difference, you know, if they were to like see both. So I'd say the biggest thing about like building that cultural brand, because at first, like my background's in TradFi and like I studied economics at Wharton, like I'm like very much in terms of layering like traditional finance or like strategies in a DeFi landscape, that makes sense from like a very objective point of view. It's like, okay, classic investing and decentralized finance, easy exposure. But in terms of the people we want to bring onto it, it's kind of a similar, a little bit edgier. It's like, it's like adjacent, like we're a cousin to Boys Club, I'd say, in terms of like the vibe of it. Like the app defaults to dark mode, right? Like you go inside and you feel like you're experiencing something that's kind of like cool and cutting edge, but also like approachable, and there's a really like seamless flow to it. So I'd say in terms of like who we're targeting as like the ideal profile, it's someone a little bit on the younger side. And like part of what I'm aiming to do is like, I'm speaking at a few conferences this year where they're all like women in the audience, or they're all people from super diverse backgrounds and demographics. And for the early DeFi beta release, we're only partnering with certain DAOs, NFT projects and collections that are held by members who are like extremely diverse in demographics. Because again, I don't want to cater to people who like have already been in the space for the past 20 years, because obviously like, or 10 years, because obviously, you know, like it's the UX UI isn't that good. It's already been like validated in that group. And also like, I don't want to keep growing that population. I'd rather bring in a bunch of different voices as like a female founder at the onset of Web3 being built. And I don't think it's like, we haven't hit that point of adoption where it's like too late. I truly believe we're still in like the Moore's curve. We're in like that early adopter phase. We haven't crossed the chasm yet, or you know what I mean? So I feel as if right now, a lot of it is just like exposing bits to audiences and literally like explaining what we're doing in a direct way, where it's like, if I have to go in and like explain it right, or that so be it. Like our influencers that we've used, like on TikTok, for instance, female, young, like I want, you know, very like permeating presence to be, just like a demographically diverse from every different regard, like gender, race, age, background, like national, like everything, literally everything possible. which is like not good because like you need to like have a really specific niche. But all I know is our niche is like not what exists already. Like the niche is like, let's go validate it in different communities and understand those triggers and like cultural on-ramps that make the most sense, because we need to meet people where they are rather than like shove like a pre-existing standard down their throat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you for speaking to that. I was just curious. And thank you for the side quest, Heidi. Back to you.
Oh, no. This has been wonderful. I mean, everything you're saying, even from your perspective, applies to, and I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but, you know, I feel like right now our demographic is very much like crypto, generally male identifying, but that's not necessarily where we're heading and where we're trying to get to. Like, this is our core group of early adopters, and we love them and they're so amazing, and we would, you know, we're building in public with them and it's incredible. But how do we reach beyond? How do we get to the Web 2, to the marginalized groups of people, to the people of very diverse cultures and all of that? So yeah, everything you're saying is very applicable, at least to Pixels. And also Beck,
one more thing.
of course.
This is like I forgot to say it, and it's like relevant. I think the main thing is like activating the community is providing real value that people understand in their lives, because we might attribute like value to certain digital assets, projects that we believe in, whatever, but that's not like necessarily meeting people where they are. They don't understand, like there needs to be some like value exchange, or like think about like bartering, like money for X good, whatever. It's like there needs to be an understanding and like a cohesion of like value exchange. And I don't think that's been totally unlocked in like Web3 and crypto for the average consumer. I think like that's the main thing. Like for general people, there needs to be like more like a synthesis between like value of goods in their world and in ours, you know?
Oh yeah, I know that for sure from our play to own, play to earn. Well, we don't say play to earn, we say play and own, or play, you know, we don't need to dive into all of that today, but I completely agree with everything you're saying. And Beck, going back to something you said earlier when you were talking about how building a community is like 24-hour job. There's just people from all these different backgrounds and all of that, and you need support in all these areas. Let me just say that I felt very seen. It's hard and it is a full-time thing, and that's why I personally think that it's really important to have people that you can rely on. So when you're talking about, oh, there are people in these different countries and cities, and you need, you know, people that speak the language and understand the culture and all of that, like having those people is so important. And it can really be a game changer. So
shout out to everybody in every Discord that is like translating for their entire community, like their entire speaking, like whatever speaking community, because that is something that I think is just like every single time I go into Discord and I see like Pixels is one of those. It's got so many different languages that people are in there translating like 24/7 just because they love it.
Yeah, and we have our own version of moderators. They're called farmhands, and we have, you know, we specifically brought on people from different languages and cultures so that they can, you know, moderate and be around to support those communities in those time zones and cultures and languages and all of that. So yeah, it's quite incredible. It's quite complex, and that also comes back to the fact that Web3 is extremely online. It's very digital, right? So it's wonderful in that we can be so expansive, but it also comes with issues or difficulties, I'll call them, more than issues. So someone in our community asked a question, and he posted a few different things. So I'm just going to pull them up and read through leading up to the question. So over the past few years, it seems like more Web 2 companies have begun to take diversity, equity, inclusion, I think you mean equality, inclusion more seriously. Yay. Web3 is fascinating because projects and companies are rapidly bringing together global communities, maybe with less resources than a company that can build a team or hire a person for this. So how are your projects navigating building a product while creating a globally inclusive environment? Can't be easy. It's very on topic.
It's a really good question. I can try and have, I'll try and approach this with how we're kind of thinking through it. I think the global part of it is like a really hard component. And when you are starting out, you kind of do this like spray approach of like, you know, where is this interest coming from? And we had that with Clutch. We kind of started with TikTok as a channel that we promoted our idea on, and we got a level of interest from a couple of different locations, be it the UK, the US, and Australia. But with that then comes this kind of navigation of the different audiences and needing to be inclusive. I mean, all of those are kind of like English speaking like countries, but then we had some interest coming from a couple of different European countries and Middle Eastern countries, and we weren't kind of funded or resourced up enough to actually provide like a service for that interest that was coming through. And it was like people coming into our Discord or our Facebook group to have conversations with us about what we were building and kind of go through the educational experience before using the wallet. And so that's, I think, like one of the challenges is just making sure that you are kind of resourced up for the kind of global audience. And I mean, for us, we're definitely not there yet, but I'm interested if like anyone else on the panel has had considerations or kind of decisions around how you've managed like an audience outside of maybe just like an English speaking world, and if that's a consideration at the moment for you at least.
Definitely happy to
ever talk about. You go ahead. Would love to hear how Boys Club is working on this.
Yeah, something really exciting happened recently that is quite literally just thrilling for me. Basically, a group of community members in Boys Club from Singapore created a fork of Boys Club. That's Boys Club Singapore. So, building upon and leveraging the Boys Club brand, but kind of a separate entity specifically for Singapore. And I thought this was super cool. They have their own Twitter account. We've talked and coordinated kind of about, keeping alignment with the original Boys Club brand, but they wanted to sort of create this fork of Boys Club within Singapore to really attract, to bring Web3 and crypto to more people outside of the US. And I thought this was really amazing, and it really exemplifies one of the things I'm most excited about for sort of the long-term vision of Boys Club, right? Is Boys Club is, once again, a universe of many different things. And I think a really exciting idea for me personally is, or would be seeing many different forks of Boys Club in the future, whether those are segmented by country or location or interest, and, still having the kind of original Boys Club community and brand also intact. And I think this really speaks to maybe like a more meta kind of point or consideration on community itself in general, which is that, if your community is successful, it really gets to a point that you can't contain, and I think that's scary. It could also be exciting. But I think there's definitely a point at scale where you need to like let go a little bit. And it's really all about setting up the fundamental context and infrastructure and shared knowledge and shared understanding of your mission and values, just like Alex said earlier, to really give people the right foundations to create their own versions of whatever you're building, right? Or interpret that in their own ways. I kind of think of community as an ever-evolving ecosystem. It's living, it's breathing, it's constantly changing. So I think, there's a lot of merit to thinking about and designing community in a formulaic and framework-based way. I'm a big advocate of that approach, but I also think there's a point, where it is necessary to let go and just kind of like trust your community after you've attracted the right participants, really communicated your values and mission and vision, and after you have that network of intrinsically motivated community members.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I think just to piggyback off of that for Seam, it's like hold space for people. Like first, hold space. Second, build tools that are open and that people can contribute to, and then like share in the upside, which I think again is something that is just such a core ethos to crypto, and it's such a core opportunity with things like NFTs. Like make sure that the people that are putting in the time and effort are compensated in some way, right? Whether that's just access, whether that's education, whether that's actual, tokens, money, whatever. I don't know, depends on your community, what works for you. But yeah, holding space, building the tools and sharing the upside will lead you down a path where you I think, to your point, Parker, can maintain a certain level of brand and culture, but you unleash the creativity of people who you could never have creative directed into building the thing that is like perfect for them.
Mm-hmm. In terms of scaling like a global community, it's really interesting because Bits, like, it changes when you're working with a fintech layer. You have to have like certain processes that you go through in every country. So it's very, very different. You can't just like scale like wildfire. You have to have certain partners set in place. So understanding our roadmap in terms of like worldwide scaling is really fascinating because we've probably seen the most interest coming from Europe in terms of what we're building as, like, if we're vertically integrating an app, an on-ramp, a wallet, and a DeFi liquidity pool into like one single application. You download it, you have full access to DeFi. I'd say the US and Europe are the most like interested in something like that, at least at the moment. But the space I'm like really, really fascinated by and like fielding a lot of conversations in is like Latin America, because the use cases for crypto are completely different, where it's something like 70%, just as much of crypto transactions are based on remittances. So it's actually like money being sent back to home countries from, US namely, and understanding how like crypto is an unlock there in more of like a fundamental way that people transact with like crypto as an asset versus a blockchain technology. So I think like understanding global scale, at least at Bits, is really like digging deep into the cultural underpinnings of what that technology would actually be used for. Because I don't think it's like a blanket statement of like, you can rinse and repeat, apply the exact same thing everywhere you go. I think it's like there's just such like a fundamental difference as you scale globally for what we're doing. So yeah, I'd say Europe is like probably the closest in terms of use case, but Latin America excites me the most for globally scaling.
Yeah, that's really interesting point actually that you just made at the end there of you almost like kind of change what you're doing to fit that new use case in that new culture or that country or what it might be. That's huge. And also Parker, what you were talking about earlier about like you start to trust people because you have to. In the end, you can't control everything, and we've been experiencing that a lot too as we grew. Suddenly people from across the world are creating a lot of UGC for us, which is magical. It's amazing. It's incredible to watch, but I don't have control of it at all, right? So it's really, really interesting, and I've loved hearing everything you guys have said today. It's all been saying such intelligent, incredible perspectives of everything that we've been talking about. So yeah, I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you all for coming. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. There is one question actually in the chat
Sure.
that I'd love to like address if we have like
yeah, absolutely. Which one was it?
Cool. Okay. So Dinglehoffer said, thoughts on the idea that even DeFi isn't really that decentralized. Over 60% of Ethereum nodes on centralized hosting wallets are centralized, DeFi, stake decentralized, oracles, etc. So I did want to address that. I think that's a really important topic. So definitely great point, and I'm really glad that we're seeing like critical thought here. Love the challenging question. Definitely true that there is some centralization issues with node hosting in Ethereum. As of September of last year, around 60% of Ethereum nodes were hosted on AWS or other cloud platforms, and that is a very big problem and something we need to solve for in the space. Luckily, there are proactive solutions and initiatives addressing this today, and I think that is top of mind also for the Ethereum community. One anecdotal point to mention there is this isn't unique to Ethereum. Over 50% of Solana nodes are also hosted on AWS, as well as 40% of Bitcoin nodes. One really important thing to note here was actually the recent blockchain architecture upgrade of the merge, which happened for Ethereum a few months ago. That brought sort of this ETH 2.0 or V2 of ETH into existence. And the architecture of this actually introduces or sets up the roadmap to introduce stateless clients, which will vastly reduce the system requirements of nodes, meaning that there will be more exit optionality for where to host them. So definitely a centralization risk that needs to be constantly monitored, but I don't think it's as big of a threat as it might seem on the surface, because there's low exit barriers. So if AWS, decides to restrict node hosting at some point, node operators can move to a different cloud server without being locked in. And we're actually seeing a great significant increase in this happening today, with actually a lot of projects and startups and hardware technologies working on this. So, post-merge, after the merge happened a few months ago, it's actually easier than ever to set up your own node in your own home, from something as simple as even a hardware like a Raspberry Pi. And so, yeah, there's a lot of node in the box solutions coming out. There's also, other technical upgrades on the horizon. But I did just want to address that question and make sure that that point was acknowledged.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was so much amazing information. So thank you so much. Yeah. Does anyone else have any last minute things they'd like to cover?
I was just going to say, Parker, I don't know if you're a thread girl, but I feel like that's like a thread waiting to happen. There's also really pretty nodes in a box. Like there's some really cool artists doing interesting stuff. I saw some at MCon this year. So there's also, for those of us that are more aesthetically inclined,
Katie,
there's a lot of different angles.
I just see a thread from you on you could do a whole thread on different node designs and rate them. I would if that were a blog, I'd read that. And I think if you made a Substack where every week you publish out one and kind of gave your rating of it and assessment of it and then gave it a score, I think it would incentivize even more beautiful node architecture in the future and also encourage more people to create self-hosted node services. Just
Let's go. I feel like this is a vlog and TikTok content waiting to happen. Shout out to Beck here.
Oh my God.
All right, I'm on it.
I will say the DeFi backend that we're talking about at BITS, I don't know if you can drop this link, Heidi, but if anyone listening to this AMA is interested, you can just go to bitscrypto.com/v2. And that's a full breakdown of what we're doing, vertically integrating, seedless wallet, feeless exchanges.
So good.
Yeah. So check that out. bitscrypto.com/v2. I feel like a car salesman.
No, I love it.
I love it.
Any of the links of the wonderful women we have here, you can find them on our Discord, on our Twitter, and in the comments below, or in the description of this video. So with that, thank you all for being here. We really appreciated it. And for all of your questions, they were really wonderful. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Bye,
guys.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Download BITS. Just go to the App Store.